Alright guys, so Sarasota was lit for spring break. It doesn't really technically start until tomorrow, but people are starting to show up and it's starting to get lit out here. You might have seen my footage of Fort Myers Beach. It was totally whacked down there. That's definitely not a spot you want to hit up. You've heard that Miami-Dade County is cracking down on spring breakers, Volusia County as well. Look, Sarasota is a safe and fun city. It's never had a crime problem, and law enforcement here is just doing their job and making sure that people are able to have fun. Many of the spring breakers in Sarasota and Bradenton are here because their grandparents own property, so they're not exactly staying in hotels. They're lodging with family, and it's a great thing because that means that the kids are up north living a much better economical life than they'll ever find here in Florida, but they're able to come down for spring break and have a good time and enjoy the warm weather. One of the serious problems that this area faces is the prevalence of DUIs, hit and runs, and leaving the scene of an accident. This is a huge problem, especially late at night, as many people decide to get behind the wheel while drinking. This is about 9 minutes north of downtown Sarasota. It's Bayshore Gardens, technically considered Bradenton. This is an infamous intersection. I've seen everything from car accidents to vehicles versus pedestrians here. By around 3 in the morning, I was done Uber driving and I decided to stop by Doña Betty's in Bradenton for some tacos and agua frescas. This is definitely one of the best places to get food late night in Sarasota, Bradenton. Another great food truck late at night is the one on the left. This is called Halal Foods. They're open till 3 a.m. for the month of February, and then they'll be open till midnight. Beyond that, there they are on the left. Now, keep in mind that Bradenton, Oneiko are kind of more high crime rate areas, so this is definitely the trenches out here. Now, Halal Foods is on the intersection of 57th Avenue East and 15th Street, which is actually 301. This is the area known as Oneiko. You can see at the end of the road here how the homeless camps are back. The cops recently ran everybody up out of the spot. But you can see there on the right side, there's already people gathering stuff there again, so it looks like the homeless camps are back. Back in this corner, there's like a nightclub that's mostly Latino. Now, I really don't ever pick up anybody for Uber here, so I'm not really sure what the vibe's like there. I picked up a few people here at these food trucks. So you got these young girls that hang out here. I picked up people at the food trucks, but that nightclub, it's not really like a big spot for Uber driving because I generally avoid Oneiko. So maybe there are a lot of rides here. I just don't mess with them because it's kind of like the trenches. So it's not really worth Uber driving here when I can be in downtown Sarasota where it's safer and people tip better. I gotta admit, I'm not really a fan of Hispanic nightclubs. For the most part, they never tip. The guys are borderline violent, and the girls that I picked up there in Oneiko that one time spilled a drink in the backseat of my car and didn't tell me about it. There's also a guy that has a hot dog stand right in downtown Sarasota. He's there during the weekends and he'll stay till around 3 in the morning. The hot dogs are really good. My favorite one is the Texas one he makes, so they're really good hot dogs. There really isn't too much food late at night in Sarasota, and that's kind of one of the biggest complaints that I get from people traveling here and locals as well, to be honest. But like I said, if you're not afraid to go to the hoods, there are a lot of food trucks in kind of grammar areas. Of course, most people coming here to vacation are not going to go into these types of places, and there is like a fair thing going on off of Fruitville. I noticed that. Weddings are really even bigger than spring break a lot of times here in Sarasota. There's a lot of really fancy high-end resorts like the Regis. There's one along Bow Key. There's the Soda. There's just all these nice resorts along the coastline. You'll notice Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, although Cybertrucks are pretty popular now. So a lot of very high-end vehicles. That's kind of the lineup outside of these resorts, so it's big money weddings. These places along the coast, resorts stay full, and the people usually tip very well. They're usually in a very good mood. This is the new St. Regis. This is kind of a more elite, very expensive place. The Ritz-Carlton in downtown Sarasota is another one of those places that caters to a lot of weddings, so weddings are a huge part of what happens in Sarasota. Right now, there's quite a few of these weddings going on. We had like a lot of people cancel or delay their events because of the hurricane, so lots of weddings going on along the coast. While driving along the coastline, the speed limits are strictly enforced. You have individuals like this that will try to pass you going fast. These are elite, wealthy areas. Definitely a type of place that are very well patrolled, and for the most part, I wouldn't even go a single mile above the speed limit on the islands. Around midnight, I spun through St. Armand Circle. This used to be packed at midnight a few years back. Since the hurricane, it's been completely dead. The locals tell me that about 50% of the businesses on St. Armand Circle are now closed, and it went from being a very fun and vibrant place to practically a ghost town now. So while downtown Sarasota stays busy and packed, little spots like St. Armand Circle are completely dead. It really breaks my heart to see St. Armand Circle like this, but it should just give you an idea that things are not really good in Florida right now. We did have 2 hurricanes that flooded St. Armand Circle, but then there's also the fact the word recession is being thrown around with an almost 9% drop in the stock market in the last month. People simply are not traveling and they are not spending money. This is downtown Bradenton. It's a good 22-minute drive from Sarasota. These two cities are practically right next to each other. Now in Bradenton, it's not the same as Sarasota. Bradenton is a much more crime-ridden city. It's kind of more of a hometown where Sarasota caters more to tourism. They had a large event, I think it was St. Patrick's Day related. So I'm picking up some girls that are back in here somewhere. Now everything is closed in downtown, so they needed to walk to me, but they didn't answer the phone calls, they didn't answer the messages. And I was literally about to quit on this one because I'm kind of blocking traffic, as well as other Uber drivers that were stuck in the same predicament of trying to pick up passengers who can't figure out that nobody can drive into this area because they've been drinking so much. So after waiting here a while and dealing with a few road raging people in food trucks that wanted to force their way through here, it's like, hey, we're all working here. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of a mess, but I had to move out of the way for this food truck right here. This guy right here is another Uber driver who's literally having the same problem I did, which is picking up somebody who can't figure out how the crap to find them. This particular food truck driver here was kind of having a fit of anger. He was upset at me for being in the way, even though I moved twice for him, but he kept trying to go wherever I was going to go, so that was kind of a headache. So I picked up my 2 female passengers in downtown Bradenton. Now they live in Sarasota. I don't know exactly what motivated them to go to Bradenton instead of Sarasota, but that's what they went with. Downtown Bradenton has a much more aggressive vibe. It simply isn't as fun or as safe or as busy. If I had to use 2 words to describe these females, it would be excessive farting. They weren't the only stinky passengers that I had. I had one worker who absolutely stank. Not only did his physical stink, but I think his vibe was pretty off as well. When you get an Uber passenger and they sit down, the first thing they say is like, well, I'm having a bad day, you know. You're like, great, man, I'm stuck in this car with this guy for 30 minutes. You know, you go Uber driving on weekend nights for a fun time, people that are in a good mood, and you get excessive farters and people that stink and have bad hygiene who are also in a bad mood. It's kind of like, wow, this is not really what I signed up for, Uber driving on a Saturday or Friday night. This guy goes on to tell me about his ex-wife, his drug trafficking exploits, his heavy, long shifts, his drinking problem, his mother-in-law. So despite being a Saturday night that had a lot going on, I actually got stuck with some pretty bland and uneventful passengers, which kind of defeated the point of going Uber driving late at night during the weekend, which is why I try to do it, is just to run to people that are drinking. They are very generous tippers. I ended up with day commuters that didn't tip very well. It just wasn't exactly the vibe I was hoping for. It wasn't the tips that I was hoping for. I made $100 in like 3 hours, I believe. I'm not exactly sure how long I Uber drove because earlier in the day, I had the food delivery app open for long periods at a time, so it kind of distorted my analytics for hours. So I don't know exactly how many hours I drove, but it wasn't much. I made $100 in probably about 3 hours, which is kind of fair for this time of year. You're making at least $30 an hour, which is a fair compensation for dealing with some of these people. Now, I drove to downtown Sarasota, and I had a passenger that canceled on me, so that was kind of a bummer because I drove all the way to downtown, and he cancels on me. Not that it's a bad thing to drive to downtown regardless, because there's going to be a lot of rides coming out of downtown. Then I picked up another passenger, and guess what? They also canceled on me. Now, this individual passenger had me waiting in front of like Main Street for something like 5 or 6 minutes. And if you do it for a minute or two, cops won't say anything. But if you park here for 5 or 6 minutes, eventually law enforcement's going to come up and say, hey, man, what the crap are you doing? You can even risk getting a ticket. So very inconsiderate. But my guess is that my passenger canceled at first because he decided to party longer. And this guy was so drunk he couldn't figure out where the crap I was, or maybe he passed out and forgot he ordered an Uber. I'm not exactly sure what happened with both of these passengers, but they were both males. I'm going to guess they were both drinking heavily and just kind of forgot what they were doing. I will guarantee you, if you're picking up somebody late at night and there's an excessive wait time, you're going to get a very intoxicated individual, because most people who are drinking forget what they're doing, or they take forever to get around to what they're doing. So in the case of these two individuals that canceled on me or made me wait excessively, those were just signs of how inebriated these people would have been and how much of a pain in the butt they probably would have been if I had picked them up. But after waiting for a very long time for this one passenger, I finally got to the 5-minute threshold, and at that point, you can close the trip and get paid for it on a cancellation fee. Now, I don't know exactly what this person was doing backing up into me. It seemed like they weren't going to stop had I not backed out myself. So I'm not sure if they were inebriated, but it's definitely a possibility. Whatever they're doing, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense because, I practically had nowhere to go. So eventually, after waiting here for what seemed like an eternity, and after the third attempt, I finally got a passenger that showed up eventually, like 2 minutes later. And this passenger was accompanied by 3 females. So it was 4 females. They were from Indiana. They were spring breakers. And I believe they were staying not in a hotel, but in a private residence. Now, these females were probably between the ages of 18 to 22 years old. And they were kind of tipsy in a fun way, not in a bad way. These females were, they weren't touchy, but they were definitely inquisitive. Now, these young females would have possibly, how do I say this, detained me forcibly hadn't I been able to maneuver around their advances. They weren't over the top, but they were like, hey, can we get your number? I was like, my wife would pretty much decapitate me, or what's the other word? Castrate me, possibly. So that was a solid pass. But anyways, they were very, blasting music and, that type of scenario. Look, I can't really complain. If you're Uber driving late at night, this is kind of what you sign up for. And this is kind of why they got an Uber, and this is what you're supposed to do when you're not sober. So they did the right thing by getting an Uber, and they were not like bad drunk. They were kind of fun drunk, and that's kind of the type of passenger I actually like to get when I'm out Uber driving. So I usually get very generous tips from passengers like that, and I got a $1 tip. So I'm not sure what went wrong. Possibly me turning down their advances could have been the buzzkill for them. I think they wanted more of a long-term ride situation, and I'm just a short-term solution here for transportation needs. They kind of wanted to hire me for a longer period of time, and I was like, got a wife at home and stuff like that. So anyways, sometimes that's the deal. But most of the time when they're that tipsy, they tip very well. What I did is I rolled all 4 windows down. I turned the headlights on, so they know that, the truck's got really dark window tints. But I rolled the windows down. I turned the lights on. There's a lot of visibility. They're blasting music that they like. They're having a good time. Usually rides like that pay $5, $10, $15, even $20. Crap, last weekend I had a girl that did a ride like this with 3 of her buddies, and they gave me a $20 tip. But they were a little bit older, and I think the older demographic team seems to tip better. I think I only got a $6 tip total for the whole night, so that's not ideal. With $100 worth of ride, $6 worth of tip is what I would consider disappointing, to be honest. So one thing I've noticed about these spring breakers is they're not very good tippers. I think appreciation for the working class person is something that you acquire later on in life. So these spring breakers just really don't tip very well. They're definitely a lot of fun. They're definitely consistent rides, but they're not good tippers. And I don't know what else I could do to change it. I have these kids that come in the car, they have a blast. They tell me I'm the coolest Uber driver they've ever had. Crap, these four girls wanted to take me home with them practically. Known as a homeless person on the bicycle here in Bradenton. Typical Bradenton stuff. But anyways, it's like, hey, you liked me enough that you wanted to keep me, but you only give me a $1 tip. Like, that's not exact. I'm not here to lay with you. I'm here to pay with you, okay? So you need to cash up some money. And anyways, I will notice that, older females are more touchy than younger females. Younger females won't touch you, but older females will. So look, when people drink, they get happy. And as an Uber driver, nobody wants to be touched up or felt up or anything of that nature. But the reality is that when women drink, they get happy, and they, especially older women, like to feel around and stuff like that. And you have to have some tolerance for people. You are the sober person, so you have to be mature. You have to be responsible, and you cannot take advantage of the situation because you're dealing with people who are inebriated. So it would be a very low thing to do to buy into that and take advantage of people who are inebriated. So that's definitely not what you're supposed to do. But the point that I'm trying to get to here is, for the most part, as an Uber driver, you gotta have thick skin for people. You're dealing with people that are inebriated, intoxicated, and you just have to, kind of shrug it off and like, hey, I'm good. I appreciate it. I'm not interested type stuff. You just got to find ways of having responsibility and knowing that the people that you're taking care of, well, you're taking care of them. And it's kind of like babysitting adults many times when you're Uber driving people who are inebriated. The smartest thing you could do if you're going to go out drinking with 3 or 4 friends, hey, invite a 5th or 4th friend and let them be the sober one. That way you have, another extra layer of protection. So don't just go drinking and everybody you go drinking with gets drunk. Have somebody there that's part of your group who kind of keeps everybody in line, keeps everybody in check. Do that on a rotating basis. If you got 4 friends that go out, okay, tonight's your night to be sober, or to be more sober than the rest might be a good term, One person who doesn't go all the way there, because in the case of these females, like, I'm not a creepy Uber driver, but there are definitely Uber drivers that would take advantage of situations like this. I had a female on this particular day. No, sorry, the night before, I had a passenger who told me that her Uber driver showed up to her house randomly one day, knocked on her door, and said he wanted to check up on her. It was an Uber driver. She said it was a Haitian guy that had given her an Uber ride like some days before, and then he randomly showed up at her house before. So there are definitely some creepy Uber drivers out there. Don't be one of those. I had a female passenger who was in law enforcement, and she acted like she was kind of tipsier than she was to test me out. And when she got out of the ride, she told me, hey, I'm a police officer, and I was just testing you, and you did really well. She's like, be responsible out there, because, there are some pretty horrendous Uber drivers. And the thing that I get is mostly a lot of people are just really happy with my driving. They're happy with, the way I behave, how I take care of them. Every once in a while, I'll get an Uber passenger that I know is not going to tip me. Day commuters is what I call them. In this case, night commuters. I know they're not going to tip me because they're working class people like me. And I might just ignore them and listen to my own music. So it's not exactly the best service, but then again, you're also not the best tipper. So it's kind of a fair trade-off. But, you do have to be responsible. And, you're carrying people that are kind of inebriated. You take advantage of the fact that they're generous tippers, but that's about it. When I get to this scenario, the best thing that I do is just remind people that I'm doing this for money. And the best way they can show their appreciation for what I'm doing is by tipping, not by licking. If you like me, more tipping, less licking is basically the model that I take with these passengers. It's like, hey, I'm here for money, not for honey. So that's the start that Sarasota has with spring break. It's not too bad. I did notice low levels of red tide on Longboat Key and on Bradenton Beach. I'm very sensitive to the red tide. I can feel it instantly. But I do believe that we're getting better. So if you're going to come down here, I do not think it's going to be a problem for you.